This is Michael Popok, Legal AF, where the Alabama House, led and controlled by MAGA, decided to flip the bird to the United States Supreme Court and refuse to follow their direction as it relates to congressional voting maps, and disenfranchised about half of their state and black voters to boot. The U.S. Supreme Court and the federal court system fired back, and now we have at least 2 out of the 7 congressional districts in Alabama, which is at least almost equivalent to the 28% of Alabama that is black, will be a black majority voting district to allow them to vote for somebody that represents their interest, so that the entire state isn't 6 out of 7 congressional districts controlled by old white guys. Alabama has always been a place where voting rights and civil rights are on the knife's edge, that the federal government, when in control by Democrats, has to keep a close eye on things in states like Mississippi and Alabama and other places in the deep, deep South, the Jim Crow South, because their natural instinct to this day in 2023, heading into 2024, is to disenfranchise their black residents as if there has been no Civil War, no Emancipation Proclamation, and no Reconstruction in this country, or Civil Rights Act, or Voting Rights Act. They live in another time period, an old-timey period where their fellow citizens who happen to be black are disenfranchised as late as this year. And so in June, when the U.S. Supreme Court, without dissent, rejected a appeal by the House MAGA to have their maps, which again would have only led to one congressperson in Alabama to be black in 2023. That was even too far for the MAGA right wing of the United States Supreme Court. Even they said that looks like a Voting Rights Act violation, and they very rarely find Voting Rights Act violations. They try to use other constitutional doctrines to avoid even making that decision. You know, they like to say, well, it's too late in the game. The maps have already been printed and the ballots have already been printed. Come see us after the election. Now, at least for the 2024 elections, we're going to have a proper map because 3 federal judges of a 3-judge panel, working with a special master appointed by them, an expert in election and electoral boundaries, has adopted one of the 3 maps that was proposed, which now complies with what the federal court, upheld by the Supreme Court, has told the Alabama legislators to do. Make sure there is another black majority district when you draw your boundaries and lines and contours for your congressional districts in your state, right? Don't disenfranchise and give us less than that. You got to give us one more black district to total 2 out of 7, or something akin to it. And they went back and said, oh, you know, here's a district, it's 38% black. That's not a majority black district that's consistent with the federal rulings by prior federal judges in Alabama, supported by the U.S. Supreme Court. And they know it. But they keep challenging and challenging, hoping to burn off time on the clock, hoping to get closer to the November election. But now the goose is cooked. It's done. Supreme Court having rejected their appeal in June, and the new panel, having looked at the map supplied, we'll put up a picture of one, the map supplied by Alabama legislature, said, no, we're not going with 1 out of 7 in a state that, again, is 28% black. And we'll adopt instead remedial map number 3. It's a sexy word for enfranchising people in your state, because it has created a new district, District 2, that's going to run through the western part of the state all the way towards Mississippi. And as a result of that drawing, sometimes we call it gerrymandering, named after a British person in Parliament who was known for drawing crazy maps. But it's supposed to look like a salamander, right? That's where gerrymander came from. So they gerrymandered this one in a positive way to pick up 48.7% black population voting, hoping that that'll be enough that the person who runs will be and wins the person that group wants. And it cut into a district of a old white guy, Barry Moore, who his district had been predominantly white. These things are important, especially as you hear about the Supreme Court's decision in affirmative action, where they said race should never be a consideration in higher education on how to select a class alone, that they should be colorblind. But Voting Rights Act is a different analysis because it stems from Lyndon Johnson, the Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, to enfranchise people. You can watch any movie that's out there about voting rights, Mississippi Burning, Selma, to see what election officials and elected officials in states like Mississippi and Alabama did just recently, starting in the 50s and 60s all the way through today, to try to deny enfranchisement of the black vote. And now this fixes it. This, it had to go through several visits to the federal government and the federal Department of Justice and the federal court system, not the state court system. It had to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. But now an unassailable, unappealable decision by 3-judge panel of the federal court in Alabama has decided and selected a map that will be used for the 2024 election, that will result in one more blue seat, black enfranchised seat in Alabama to at least match the racial composition and demographics of the state. And that's a win for democracy. That's a win for Democrats as they head into a very tough race in trying to reclaim the House, now having hopefully picked up one more blue seat in Alabama, of all places, even though it'll just be 2. All of these ones and twosies, they add up. They add up to a majority if you pick up a seat here or there. One of the reasons the Democrats are not in a majority right now is because the Republicans picked off some seats in a reliably blue state like New York, in places that they never thought. They kind of ignored it, thinking they would get it, and they didn't. The Republicans targeted it and grabbed it. And you add up those, a loss here, a loss there, another loss here, and suddenly you're down 7 or 8 votes. And that's enough to tip such a close House majority. And so the good news out of this hot take is that federal court system, federal Department of Justice, federal judges, and even the U.S. Supreme Court has come to the side of black Alabamians to make sure that they're not disenfranchised, because they would be if the House, the state legislators of their state had their way. And that's where the justice system, as we sit on this corner right here on Legal AF and MeidasTouch, at the intersection of law, politics, and justice, it's often the federal courts that are the protectors of people's civil rights and voting rights. That's one of their jobs. People that were taking pot shots at Merrick Garland didn't look at his full body of work since he's been in office. The protection of voting rights, suing to enforce and to obtain abortion rights and bodily autonomy for women, to protect people who are in that realm of protecting a woman's right to choose. That is what you want your Department of Justice to do. That is what this Department of Justice is doing. And that's why we have decisions like the one I'm reporting on now, where we're going to be +1 in Alabama, and black citizens and residents of Alabama will have their voices heard. I'll report on important constitutional matters, civil rights, voting rights matters, Supreme Court, which is now back in session starting October 1 until July when they take their break. As they happen, we catch these events and developments. We look at them, we examine them, we tear them apart, we put them back together again right in front of your eyes on hot takes, just like this one. If you like this kind of hot take, who doesn't like hot takes? Then you'll love our podcast. Legal AF, only on the MeidasTouch network on Wednesdays and Saturdays. We do a live YouTube, then we take the audio and put it on audio platforms wherever you get your audio. Rank us, rate us, follow us, subscribe to us. It's all free. It's all free. Help the MeidasTouch network get to 2 million free subscribers on their YouTube channel. The faster they get to 2 million, the better it is for you in progressive democracy. Your voice will be heard. As the bigger they are, the more your voice is heard, as I like to say. Until my next hot take, give me a thumbs up on this one. Until my next Legal AF, see you there and in the chat. This is Michael Popok, Legal AF.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.